This video describes the two-dimensional data visualizer. It's new in Statgraphics Centurion version 17. The two-dimensional visualizer Statlet creates a dynamic visualization of multiple time series using bubble charts. Up to 4 variables may be displayed. 2 primary variables are displayed along the X and Y axes. A secondary variable may be used to define bubble colors. Another secondary variable may be used to define bubble sizes. Time is manipulated using controls on the Statlet toolbar. The example we're going to look at is economic and demographic data for 188 countries around the world, recorded between 1961 and 2009. The data come from the World Bank. I've loaded the data into the Statgraphics datasheet. To create the visualization, I'll go to Statlet's 2D Dynamic Visualizer. On the y-axis, I'll put the life expectancy of everyone that lives in a particular country. On the x-axis, I'll put the fertility rate. That's the average number of children that each woman gives birth to. Slicer is where I'll put year. The Statlet will allow me to then slice the data by year. To identify individual bubbles in the chart, I'll choose the country code. I'll let the size of the bubbles be proportional to the infant mortality rate, and I'll color the bubbles according to their location, their region in the world. When I press OK, the visualization will begin. Initially, you'll see the data for the year equals 1961. You notice quite a bit of variability. Life expectancy varies from approximately 75 years in certain countries down to under 35 years in other countries. Looking at the color, you can see that most of Europe is in the upper left-hand corner, while most of Sub-Saharan Africa and a lot of the Middle East and Arabia are in the bottom right. Up in the top left, you have fertility rates between about 2 and 4 children. In the bottom right, fertility rates between about 6 and 8 children. The size of the bubble is proportional to the infant mortality rate. And again, you can see much lower levels of infant mortality rates up in the upper left than down in the lower right. The controls on the toolbar let me change the year for which the data are displayed. If I grab the slider and move it toward the right, you'll see the year increase until we get to 2009. Or I can slide it back to 1961. I can also push the right pointing arrow to let time evolve by itself. And now you can see a general pattern of the world to move toward lower fertility rates, higher life expectancies, and lower infant mortality. The Analysis Options dialog box lets me do some interesting things with this display. The first thing I'm going to do is bring the year back to 1961. I'll then push the right mouse button, go to Analysis Options. I think I'll increase the minimum bubble size from 1 to 3. That'll keep them from getting too small. I'm also going to ask the program to label selected identifiers. That would be selected countries. And the countries I'm going to select are China and Vietnam. Here we go. I'm also going to ask it to highlight not all the bubbles, but just the selected identifiers. I'll then press OK. Initially, you won't see China and Vietnam because there's some missing data. But if I let time evolve, they'll soon appear. There's China. And notice, once China and Vietnam appear, the dramatic increases in life expectancy and reductions in fertility rate. We also have the ability to leave breadcrumbs behind. Breadcrumbs will show the path that each of the countries has taken through time. Let's bring time back to 1961. Press the right mouse button and go to Analysis Options. I'm going to turn off my labels for now and also ask it to highlight all the bubbles. Now I'm going to go to the bottom left and ask it to leave breadcrumbs for all the bubbles, and then press OK. As time evolves, you'll notice it will leave a trace behind showing the path that each of the countries has taken as time has evolved. You'll see some very interesting paths, but eventually everything will move toward the upper left corner. Two other options are quite useful. If I push the right mouse button and go to Analysis Options, I could ask it to smooth the data. Smoothing the data would take the underlying time series and apply a certain smoother before the data were displayed. One option that I often use is the robust lowest smooth. Lowest stands for locally weighted scatter plot smoothing. Robust because it's somewhat insensitive to outliers. By adding a smoother, I could make the points move a little bit more smoothly. The second option has to do with how missing values should be handled. A good option is to ask that they be set to the same value as in the previous time period. This would keep bubbles from disappearing and appearing again where there were missing values. Let's run it once more back to 1961 and let time evolve. It's a fascinating way to watch data change over time. And you can learn an awful lot from this type of display that you'd never see in a static graph.